Thank you all so much again for joining. I'm Tangia Renee Estrada. I will be your moderator for this short ride. I am a certified mental, mindset and wellness coach. I support women in changing their relationships with themselves, with their bodies, and getting rid of burnout and overwhelm in their lives. So that's me in a nutshell. What I would like to do is for all of our panelists to just very quickly, in like 2 short sentences, introduce themselves so that we can get to it. Let's start with Rosie.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending where you are. I am Rosie Aiello. I am CEO of the Love is Kind Network. I work with women who are emerging from toxic and narcissistic relationships to help them reclaim their voice, their value, their confidence and courage to create the productive, prosperous, and joyful life that they deserve, and help them find what I call the kind love of their life. I'm a women's life and transformation coach.
Wonderful. Thank you. Caitlin, how about you?
Hello, everybody. My name is Kate Donovan. I am the host of Fried the Burnout podcast. I am a burnout coach that works especially with female entrepreneurs and an acupuncturist in Manhattan.
Thank you. Varnette, please introduce yourself.
Hey everybody. See, look, tongue-tied already. What a way to start. Okay, right. So my name is Vernette, and I am the founder of a movement, if you like, called Women on the Rise. And the reason why I actually set that up was because I was just feeling this pulling that, particularly with those that are in my community, to want to help us as women do better in terms of how we relate to each other. I just was seeing a lot of holes and gaps around a lot of misconceptions as to what it is to be a woman, and actually a lot of the things that we kind of put to the side because we can be viewed as being weak or being viewed as being less than. So this is my expression of trying to bring people together, and particularly to encourage women to want to be better for the younger women that are coming behind us. So that is Women on the Rise in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. Claudia, please introduce yourself.
Yes, hello. My name is Claudia Sam. I'm a soul coach, and I support driven women who have burned out or who have forgotten who they are to confidently trust themselves and take the leap fearlessly towards their purpose. And I do that using my tune-in method.
Wonderful. Thank you. Sheena, please introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Sheena Yapchan, and I'm a keynote speaker, coach, author, and podcaster on building self-confidence. I help women break out of their shells so they can live an authentic life and thrive. And I also host a podcast called The Tao of Self-Confidence, where I have interviewed over 800 women on the topic of self-confidence. So I'm just grateful to be here with this awesome panel and to talk about mental health, because it's something that is definitely still a taboo in this generation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Kay, can you please introduce yourself?
Morning. My name is Kay Henry. I'm a New York State licensed mental health counselor. I'm also the host of Black Therapy Uncensored, where we talk about mental health in the Black community and erasing that stigma, which I feel is very important. Today, I want to also focus on maternal mental health, which I feel is ignored, not just after a woman gives birth, but during the whole journey, even conception.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anastasia, I'm not sure about your pronunciation. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Anastasia Washington, but you can fancy my name any way you
Okay.
want. I have identity crisis enough, so you can just to call me whatever. I am an actress, comedian, and filmmaker. I focus on bringing attention to BIPOCs and biracial journey and identity and the statements that we hear and how we internalize that. And I also focus on disorder. I just recently did over the pandemic, a web series called Disordered, which showed eating disorders and other disorders from a non-skinny white girl perspective. So a variety of, it's all different sizes. So we had that discussion, and I like to destigmatize what it looks like to have to have issues.
Wonderful. Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Nahid, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Good evening from Dubai. My name is Nahid, and I'm a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming. I help women with personal transformation, specifically with imposter syndrome, which is something which almost every one of us, somewhere or the other, do suffer from. So specializing in self-talk, self-image, self-love, and self-doubt, so that you can come out and be the best version of yourself, not just for one day, but every single day.
Beautiful. Thank you. Out of curiosity, all of the panelists here, how many of you are podcasters or content creators of some kind? Just like raise your hand. All of us. Okay. So every single one of us is a podcast or some kind of digital outlet for the audience. So if you want to connect a little more deeply, I believe there's a place that you can go to our bios and you can find some links. Or if you're, just search each person's name out and it should take you to wherever their content is located. They're a podcaster or whatever it might be. So we're all digital content creators here. So welcome. Let's go ahead and jump into this conversation. So when Anu told me about the conference and this session on healing and education and mental health, I thought it was so important because it's always important, right? And we're finally in a place that people are talking about mental health and their wellness and healing much more openly. And I believe a lot of that is a result of we all sort of collectively found ourselves in a place where we needed mental health support of some kind because we were walking along, living our lives, and then it felt like the world went sideways all of a sudden. And here we are, a year later after the start of the pandemic, still working through the fallout of that. We're like, for lack of a better word, celebrating or acknowledging our 1-year anniversaries in lockdown, right? It's a very weird state of being to live through. And so it brought what was under the surface, whatever we weren't dealing with, to the surface. And we had to figure out ways to navigate these things that were easy to put on a shelf for us in the past. So that's why I think this session is really important. Maybe it's not specifically mental health. Maybe it's a self-care issue that you've been dealing with. They're all related to our mental health, guys. So there's that, right? I would love to hear from whoever wants to speak up on the panel, and let's just take stock of where we are right now. So how have you found you individually as a person and your work in this space of mental health and wellness has really changed over the last year? What have you seen be different? Anastasia, why don't you start us off?
I think I'm more honest. It may be my age or whatever, but I think I've kind of come into my own in my 37th year of life, and I've just decided to say my piece. And I think one of the things about that is the change in society's awareness of certain issues that have always been in my family, issues, being a person of color. I've dealt with, Black Lives Matter my whole life, before it was a trend. And I think I had to come to terms with all of my friends coming to terms with it being trendy and a thing. So I had to deal with a lot of why didn't you listen to me last year? Why weren't you listening to me when I was, whatever. And so I think I have become more bold and more just more for myself and my way than I ever have been. And it could be just a variety of things. For me, that's trickled over into my creative process, and I am very honest in my stuff in a comedic way, but still honest, and I love that.
Have you noticed in your work how things have changed in terms of wellness or mental health for the people that you work with?
Yeah, I think, I did a web series over the pandemic called Disordered, and we really hit the issues that we're all dealing with, like isolation and what it's like to have an eating disorder and being in isolation and being around food all the time, and what it's like when you tell people like that you have an eating disorder but you're not a size 2 and you're not a white girl, like all this stuff, like people are like, but and so like all that stuff was really like explored. I think because we had the time to, but also we are forced to sit with it. And so it definitely, I've been seeing a lot of, even in my podcast, people just being honest and open about like not being okay or not, this being an issue for them, and a variety. So yeah, I think it's just like honest. We've been sitting in honesty right now, I feel like.
Yes, honesty it's been a thing. Claudia, I think you said I saw your hand up. You had something.
Yeah, thank you. I love that, Anastasia, the honesty. And I find that way more true for everyone in our surrounding. I have a friend who's not very spiritual, and she's here with me today doing co-working in the other room. And she's going crazy with the isolation, and she's starting to tune into herself and be like, what's important to me? And during this isolation, because where I am, we were in the red zone. So all the yoga studios were closed. The restaurants were closed. I already live near a lake and near a mountain. And so I'm in the woods. And so I love nature, and I find myself nurtured just by the silence and maybe a little, I don't know what the word would be. Irony comes to mind. I find myself wanting more of that silence and being annoyed when people now come in my bubble. Like, I'm okay in my silence. I'm okay in my space. But then yet again, I'm yearning for that connection with other people. And in my clients, I see that their need for that relationship with themselves is increasing because they don't have the outlet of being constantly faced by the judgment of others in person, whether it's in work or in family gatherings, and now they're faced with their own judgments. So they're having to navigate their own fears and navigating their self-worth and finding validation not from outside in the real world now, but finding validation in other ways than they have ever known, creating that happiness for themselves, which is what I feel like I've been super blessed with, helping women navigate this time in solitude, but also getting to know themselves in a time where no one was prepared for. You're muted, Tangia.
I will watch that. Wonderful. Thank you, response. So, going off of something that you just said, Claudia, that I wanted to touch on is, yes, this past year has been the year of solitude in a lot of ways, of people sitting with their own thoughts, sometimes for the first time, sitting with their own choices, behaviors for the first time, and really having to look at themselves. I'd love to hear from anybody on the panel, but especially Kay, as a mental health professional, what have you seen has been the impact of that? Whether is it on a spectrum? Has it been good? Has it been bad? Where has that fallen for people, and how are we reacting to it?
I've been working a lot with youth. I do have adults on my caseload, but I work with a lot of teens and younger kids. And what I'm seeing is increased anxiety. A lot of them have expressed that when the world does finally open back up and we're kind of back to a normal, it's not going to be the normal we had before March 2020, how are they going to reconnect with people in a social environment? A lot of them had already been struggling because we have technology. And so people are often into their, the tablet, their phones, they're crossing the street, the headphones are on, they're, texting someone, or they're on Instagram. But even more so now, it's, I'm not connected to anyone, but how am I going to connect with people when I already don't have those social skills? And so it's a lot of me building those social skills with those kids, and like, well, you already have it in you. let's work on that and prepare you for when the world does open back in. Because honestly speaking, my generation, I'm okay with that. I can shut down and I'll be okay. And then if I'm around people, I'm fine. But we have a different generation of children who, like, they grew up on technology. Like, internet is 24/7 for them. So there is no turning on and off for them. So it's an increased anxiety and also an increased depression. Like, school is a real struggle for them. And, kids are resilient. And they'll say, everything is fine. But when you really sit down with them, everything is not fine, because they're not only taking on their stress, they're trying to take on the stresses of the adults who are not resilient and who are not fine. So that's what I've been witnessing in my practice and with the children.
Yes, thank you. So yes, I think we've, as all of us being practitioners in some way in the mental health or wellness space, we've all seen the increased level of anxiety from those that we work with. But it's across the board, right? So what the pandemic has done is we have seen an amplification of these things. We know that women and people of color have been the most impacted by the worst of the outcomes of the pandemic and the global shutdown, economic strife. For us as practitioners, how are you individually navigating that for yourself while also being able to create space for the people that you work with? And I think this is an important piece of the conversation to have, especially for our audience, because like us, our audience has to manage their life while also trying to navigate whatever else is outside of them, whether they have family, they have children, they have friends that they're trying to be supportive of. So I'd love for you all to give some firsthand experience of how you are navigating it on your own and how you're doing that while holding space for other people. Who would like to go? Caitlin, please.
Happy to jump in here. For me, this has been the year of renewing and refining boundaries. As much as we are in more solitude, we're also in a more blurry space. Everybody can be in my room, in my Zoom. Everybody's in my space. Everybody's in my house, right? And my husband is home, and I'm home, and we're all home. And I'm lucky enough to have support with getting my house cleaned. They were in my house for 2 hours this morning. The boundaries are different. And I find that this year has really required me, and I teach boundaries anyway. My second book, I'm halfway through writing my second book. It's on boundaries. My first book says a lot about boundaries. So this was already a topic for me, but I've spent this past year really refining what it means to me to have clear boundaries, to be able to state and share my boundaries in a clear, kind, and concise manner. And I have found that my clients have been coming to me with the same problem that I was having, which is how it happens, right? As soon as we need something in our own lives, all of our clients start asking for it. And we're like, oh, okay, give me 5 minutes to figure this out and I'll get back to you,
Absolutely. Thank you, Caitlin. Before we go on to the next speaker, Rosie, you'll be up next. I just want to reset the room really quickly because I've noticed some more people have come in to the audience. So hello, welcome to this conversation. This is Healing and Education for Humanity, Mental Health Matters. And we have a wonderful panel full of mental health and wellness practitioners in the space. And we are talking about what we have seen happen over the last year with our clients, with ourselves. And soon we'll be talking about what we see happening in the future and giving some great tips on how you can support your mental health and wellness as we continue to navigate through things. The question on the board at the moment is, how have each of our panelists as practitioners in the space found ways to navigate through the past more than a year of craziness that we've all been experiencing, while at the same time holding space for their clients and everything else in their lives? And it's an important question because it's something that we all have to do. And so I'd love to hear from more professionals in the mental health and wellness space who do this for a living, but also have to navigate it on their own. So Rosie, please, I know you had something to say. You're on mute. At the bottom of the screen, there should be a little, there you go.
I was sitting there. Yeah. Thank you. I think this is such a hot topic. I think for me personally was really that becoming aware. My background is because I've experienced abuse, I'm very familiar with PTSD and the depression and anxiety that comes with that, and then sort of my clients. So you're already sort of set with triggers, and I've done a lot of healing. But this year in particular, when you're now thrust into, like someone mentioned, isolation and uncertainty, and I think that's what's the whole relationship of being in an abusive relationship is uncertainty. This whole thing with pandemic create a lot of uncertainty. So now all of a sudden the foundation is just really shaky, and you don't know what is going to happen. And for me personally, I just would constantly become aware. What are my thoughts? What am I thinking? What is coming up for me? How am I feeling? And really going within. I think you kind of mentioned that too, Caitlin, of just really going within. And I think this is the key part here is one, having self-compassion for myself, how I'm personally navigating this, and having and offering my clients to be self-compassionate, not to judge themselves. Hey, you know what? I'm going through a really tough time here. I really don't know what's going on. I'm experiencing all of these feelings, and my family's here, and all this unknown, and to kind of do a reset and just close everything down, get a little bit softer with yourself, and to offer some self-compassion. And there's a great book by Dr. Kristen Neff on that topic. And leading into that would be to reduce the judgment. Like, why can't I do this? Everyone's smart. It's like, why am I not be able to handle this? We go into that so often. So that's the other thing. I try to catch myself not judging myself. Well, why didn't I get this done? I just wasn't feeling very good that day. I was feeling the stress of everything. And it's like, okay, it's okay. I can not judge myself either. And I think this is kind of how my whole work is. Like, I'm very much future focused, and to try to shift yourself, I shift myself into, after I go through the self-compassion, not judgment, getting my thoughts down. And this is the same pattern I do with my clients, is like, okay, how can we be future focused? What can I do even today, just today, to take one step that will just maybe make me feel a little bit centered? Not that I have to have all the answers. And I think this is a good time. We've been here a year. It's like we're all here in some shape or form. We have shown that we are resilient. As a human species, we are very resilient, and we've been challenged. It's like, yeah, you're here. You did it. And I think we should acknowledge that. Everyone should acknowledge that. I can't hear you, Tangia.
Yes. Would anybody like to add anything? Nahid, and then we'll go to Vernette.
I so agree with you, Rosie. Being with ourselves in that space and allowing ourselves to be, if I don't want to do something, I won't do it today. Giving that self-allowance to ourselves, and not pushing ourselves that, no, this is the schedule that I have always followed. This is the way my day has to be organized. These are the things that I have to get done. Allowing us to not get it done today. Being in that flow. There have been days when I've actually canceled all my appointments and just gone, stayed in bed, taken a book, watched a movie, given myself that space, just to be in that flow, just to take care of myself. And I think this is something which I didn't do earlier, because we were always up and about, going on the move and always taking care of things. But now when we've all been home, and I don't know, probably not much has changed, apart from the very fact that, earlier we were more out than in, and now we are more in than out. That's all that's different. Other than that, nothing else has changed. But just because we hear so much about it, we have heard for the last 1 year so much about it. It did take somewhere, it stayed back in our subconscious. So it used to come out, that, no, I want to go for a holiday. I mean, yeah, that was something which I missed, because I'm a person who loves to go on holidays, and I haven't been able to do that. So that came to me, and that struck me up, that I really missed going on a holiday. But allowing myself to feel that pain, that, that not feeling good today because I'm really missing going out on a holiday, being in that space, that happened when I did that. At the end of the day, I felt a bit better because I gave myself the space to be me. And this is something which I even spoke when I work with my clients, and then I've worked with a lot of people from anxiety and PTSD in the last 1 year, especially with PTSD. Because what had happened is that people who had, come out of it somehow managed to deal with it. When they got this space, they went back into it. They were sucked into it because those when you didn't have much to do and you were sitting around, those thoughts start coming back to you, and you went back into that hamster's wheel. So, just allow yourself to be, all right, if I'm on that hamster's wheel, I will be there. I am there. I accept it. I acknowledge it. Just allowing us to be in that space, that's really tremendously helped. And it has also got a lot of reflection about self and about others. And about, as she said, we are so resilient. We are all here. We didn't look at that. We were looking at what is not there. We didn't look at what is there. So now that we see more and more people being centered on what we have. And that's a beautiful change which this pandemic has gotten.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nahid. Vernette, did you want to add on?
Yeah. Okay. So two things. So the first thing for myself is that many years ago, I had what I call a collision with something called chronic fatigue syndrome, which for those of you that are not familiar with that, it's literally, in my case, I was burning the candle at 3 and 4 and 5 ends, and my body just said no, and my body shut down. So I wasn't in any physical pain, but it literally just meant even to maybe leave this room right now and go around the corner, that was a mission to do that, because it's like all of the muscles in my body just felt heavy, everything. And then I even found that if I would be in my bed trying to function, like if I'm on my laptop and trying to do, the multitasking thing, I would feel it in my body, and my body would be like, nah, you're not doing that either. And so I had a good year with myself because I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. I was just in the bed, or if I could make it to the sitting room to sit down, that's where I was. And so I found that in that time, what it helped me to do, I'm not saying it should have taken all that, but what it helped me to do was, I think first and foremost is to be comfortable in my own skin. So, and I think that that's one of the key things, to be comfortable in your own skin. Like when you're not wearing all the labels, when you're not being everything, like, are you all right with yourself? Are you all right with the stillness when everyone's gone off to work and everybody's doing life around you and you're just there? More recently, in terms of the pandemic, when I find myself slipping back into those habits of, okay, I've got this to do and that to do, one of the things I've really been working on is, I've just got this phrase that I say to myself, which is, be committed to yourself. That's like an important phrase for me at the moment. And being committed to myself is all of the things I think everyone has said in terms of the space, the isolation. But being committed to myself is the fact that, ladies, I am actually skinnier than this. So being committed to myself is my diet. Being committed to myself is, I've got a whole bunch of things to do as a business owner, as this and that and the other. But actually, there's a couple things that need to happen with me first before I can be all of those things. And the last thing I would want to say, it kind of feeds into what Kay was saying, actually, because I deal with a lot of young people as well, particularly young women. And I'm going to suggest something because it's a bit of a quirky thing for me. I love tech. I love the digital space. That is what my business is around. But I think there's a tension here that I think that all of us need to be mindful of, because I do actually think that one of the reasons why we're struggling so much now is because of unhealthy relationship to the technology. I think that actually we see in people that don't even know how to do relationships and simple things like etiquette and, what are considered to be norms in terms of how we engage and socialize with people. A lot of that pre-pandemic, I think that a lot of us, we lost that already. And so as Tangia said, when we got into pandemic, it all just brought the covers off. But the other side of it is that now I don't think that there's some things we're not going back to, because these forums are great and they're fantastic. But I think that by default, as a people, as humanity, if you like, we've gotten so used to or more proficient at dealing with algorithms and our mobile devices and so on than we have in relation to how to even just have like a long lasting friendship, never mind relationship with your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Even just being able to stay the distance in friendship, we find that difficult because you can't turn your friends on and off like your mobile device. You know, it's messy. And so I feel like that's also part of it as well for me, is that I think that there really needs to be more of a focus on the balance in terms of how the mental health is being affected because of tech. And that's a weird thing for me to say because I love it at the same time. So I have to be quite mindful of those boundaries as well. But I think that for all of us and just people in general, I think that that's probably going to be a big thing moving forward.
Probably, yes. Thank you for that. All really great points. A reminder to our audience members, there's some great links that have been dropped by the panelists in the chat. You can scroll through there. There are some book recommendations, various things. And for our panelists, please, before we wrap up today, drop your links in there, whether it be your website or social media for our audience members, just to make it a little bit easier for them to connect to you. Great. Okay. Thank you. So the next question I have is an observation I've made because I've noticed it just with my friends and family members and clients, but also with myself. And so what I've noticed as a result of being in lockdown and pandemic, our economy rapidly having to change. And as a result of us, many of us, not all of us, but many of us now transitioning to fully working at home, which means we're working there, we're living there, we're working out there. All of the things are happening in this space for us. And what I've observed is that has changed for a lot of people, the dynamic of what it means and what the role is that women now play in the home and in their work. And so we had, we come to a place that women have worked really hard to gain equity, whether pay equity, equity in the workplace, equity of understanding. And suddenly these roles have very much changed because everybody has been sent home. Not everybody, but in my personal experience, I am now completely at home. My husband's work, he still works outside of the house because he's in the trades. So, building keeps going. They're still building things. They still have to work on the electrical lines, and that's the industry he's in. So he's still out there. And what I've noticed is there's this dynamic of what it means to be a woman and the role that you play has subtly shifted. We know that the pandemic has disproportionately affected women. We know that the job losses were almost exclusively for women. We know that for parents, it's almost always the women who are doing the homeschooling now. And so I would love to hear from the panelists about how you have seen this relationship shift, how it is affecting women specifically, and what do you advise as a way for women to navigate through this rapidly changing role that we didn't ask for. We're simply just trying to survive. So how do we navigate that? Sheena, please start us off.
Hey, so I know the pandemic has really affected women, negatively, especially women of color, right? Like you mentioned, 100% job losses, and it's due to not because it's being laid off, but part of it is also as women are forced to stay at home with their kids. And I don't have any kids, but, I talk to my friends and they're always, super tired because they have to work, they have to clean, they have to cook, they have to do online learning for the kids and take care of them at the same time. And, a lot of us don't really do a lot of self-care tips, right? I mean, like taking care of ourselves because nobody talks about that. And because nobody talks about that, that's when all our mental health issues start to arise. And so just learning to hold a safe space where women can just say, I'm not okay. Like that's really important, especially, growing up in the culture I was in, I was always told to never make any noise, just stay in your lane and just do as you're told. But now that as women, more and more of us are starting to speak up, telling you it's okay to talk about these things. And one of the things I do is I really hold a lot of clubhouse chats, just an open space for women to talk about what they're going through, right? Just even being able to say that I got through today is like a huge win for us, right? Because nobody really celebrates the little things that we do in our life. So for me, it's just, always trying to find ways to help women give support, because support is the one thing that they're missing. Support is something that most women are craving for. But as women, we're also afraid to ask for that support or to ask for help because of what society tells us, right? It's considered weak or it's shameful, but we really have to learn to ask for help. That's actually asking for help and asking support was really the one thing that helped me bring myself back up from this pandemic, because I wasn't really feeling that well too in the beginning, right? Even though I talk about self-confidence, my self-confidence was really down at the time because I thought, the world was going to end, to be honest, like everything closing down and everyone was at home. And that's where all our mental health issues start to arise, right? So, I've been giving a lot of workshops of learning to take care of ourselves, right? Whether it's to have some me time, some downtime, whether it's to start a hobby, whether it's to set boundaries, right? Especially when we're at home, right? We do need to set boundaries, especially for women who still work a job, right? Just because you work for someone doesn't mean you're available 24 hours a day at home. Like, you still have other things to do. And so if you don't set those boundaries, you're going to get overworked, you're going to get tired, you're going to get your mental health issues will start to arise. And one thing that I've done is I've stopped multitasking because that really drained me out. I've learned to just do things one thing at a time, even if it takes me 5 years to do it, or just not being able to say, oh my God, I didn't do everything today, I feel so stupid. But it's just being able to do that one thing and conquer it and say, I finally conquered it. Like last week, I was finally able to figure out how to do a virtual Zoom background. And that took me 6 months to do. But you know what? I'm glad that I was able to do it because now I can celebrate it. And learning to just celebrate these little things that we've done is huge, right? Because we take these little things for granted. And so, yeah, one thing is support, helping women maybe find different ways to make money, whether they want to be an entrepreneur or, forge their own path. I think that's the one thing that we need, because as women, we are so capable, right? We're more capable than we realize, but it's how we see ourselves is what stops us for forging our own path or taking that first step to our greatness. And I've been reading, lots of articles. And one thing they mentioned was that post-COVID, we need more women leaders to save the world. And I truly believe that. If you see all the women leaders who have handled the pandemic, they've handled it very well versus the other countries, right? And so now it's just trying to find ways to help women see their potential, see what they're capable of, see that they are, more than enough to go out there and do amazing things. And the more we can help bring women up, the more we can actually bring down, the confidence gap that we have between men. And we can start, eliminating things like pay equity, having more women leaders, having more CEO positions. And, it has to start with us, right? If we want that change, it really has to start with us. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you, Sheena. Who else wanted to go? And there were several people that wanted to talk on this one. Okay, Claudia, please, what was your response?
I love the first step towards greatness and how it starts with us. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so I have two things that come to mind. The first thing is I'm not a mom as well. And often what happens with my clients is that they think, well, I have all these things to do. I have to fold this laundry today. I have to do this meal. I have to go, and then the list goes on. I'm like, what happens if the laundry doesn't get done today? Really, what happens? But that was actually not one of the points I wanted to say. When we're in a plane, and they often talk about putting your own mask on first. You've heard this, I'm sure, many times. So what happens, so I'm talking to you who is here, who is watching us. What happens if you don't put your own mask on first? Will your children and the people you love and care for still be there if you don't take care of yourself first? Not in the same way. And so self-care and learning to put yourself on that to-do list up higher than cleaning the bathroom or doing the laundry, you are more important. And it's noticing that if there is guilt, it's okay because you've been brought up and educated that it is something to be selfish or to be guilty of, to put yourself first. But you have the choice to keep on that belief that that you have to feel guilty or not, because you can make self-care a lifestyle. It is possible. And it starts with this. Let's all do this together. Exhale everything. Inhale through the nose. Exhale through the nose. Just that, even if you're hidden away in the closet, you can take 3 breaths And that one other thing I wanted to say is be kind to yourself. You are doing the best that you can, and you're not alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. That was helpful. One thing I think we would be remiss if we didn't touch on if we were talking about healing and self-care in women is another area that I think this whole situation as a result of the pandemic has really amplified for women is body image. And maybe this is just always top of mind for me because before I became a coach, I was a personal trainer. And before the pandemic, I was a competitive athlete. So body image was always, top of mind for me. And one thing that I have noticed now, especially, is since things are starting to open back up in pockets and it's spring and it's going to be summertime soon, is that first of the year anxiety that people always experience around, I need to lose weight, or what does my body look like? I need to be summer ready. But there's a different tone to it now. There's a real, not just an anxiety, a real fear that I'm sensing from women about being too something, being too out of shape, not being fit enough, being too overweight, whatever the thing might be in their minds. And it has a definite tinge of like a self-loathing that isn't usually part of like the first of the year resolution people. Like they're just like, yeah, I'm going to do this thing. And then they do it for 2 or 3 weeks and then they move on, right? This is something deeper. There's a real anxiety there, a real sort of self-loathing about one's body because people have been at home, right? Most of us probably aren't working out that much. Some of us are, most of us aren't. And what does that mean as a woman who's like going to be like almost like a debutante revealed to the world again and not be prepared for it? So I think that we need to spend a little bit of time, just let's keep it short because we do need to transition to what we see for the future and some tips. But I would love for a couple of people to touch on what you see happening around body image and what women can do to think differently about that. Anastasia, please.
I mean, I'm from a field where I was born as a child actor, like told at 8 years old, you're getting chunky. That's the first time a manager told me I was getting chunky. So I am from an area that already is very critical. It's been nice, I think, to do auditions and my stand-up shows from this up. It's been really nice. But I, as a recovering eating disorder, I mean, obviously you have that mindset that you're always struggling with the rest of your life. I've really been ups and downs during this time, right? Like I've been like really great with it and really great with my self-confidence, and then really in that ED like brain, and I've finally come out of this cloud. And I think it has to do mainly with narrating myself, like the way I talk to myself, and the way my friends can talk to me, and the way I talk to my friends. So when my friends say something negative, I go, don't talk to my friend that way. Like if they say something negative about themselves, I go, don't talk about my friend that way. Just calling out these like negative statements we say to each other. And when I do it to myself, I do the same thing. If I go, ugh, you're getting so fat. Oh God, you remember when you used to dance 6 hours a day? I go, don't talk about my friend that way. And then I just re-narrate that. That's helped me, and it's got me to a good place, finally.
Good tips. Yeah, definitely. This is something I see a lot in my own practice because one of the key tenets that I help my clients with is healing their relationships with their bodies and their food. And I have a similar sort of path as you, Anastasia. I put myself on my first diet when I was 10 years old, and that started a lifetime of disordered eating until I was finally, 30-ish and looked around and was like, something's got to change. Like, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep doing these diets because it's not getting me anywhere. And I feel like crap. So yes, there has to come a point where you are willing to say to yourself, this has to change. I call it the moment of getting sick of yourself.
Yeah, and treat yourself like you would a friend. Like that's the way I deal with it. And I think maybe, for moms or something like that, it would be treat yourself like you would your kid with the kindness that you would your kid, because I had to, it was hard for me to give myself a positive narrative, right? But I would cheerlead my friends like nobody's business. So I just became one of my own friends so that I could talk to myself respectfully.
Good point. Yes, thank you. Okay, so we are starting to run a little short on time, so I want to transition us a little bit out of where we are right now, sort of the state of how we're seeing things, and have us look into the future and look into how we see healing and wellness and mental health starting to play out now that we know I think for most of us, there's probably a light at the end of the tunnel on some level. And we know that things are going to start changing. Eventually of course, we don't know what the future is going to look like. There's definitely going to be some long lasting changes, some things that are not going to go back. But as we are working through this space of healing and trying to help those around us heal from what they've been experiencing over the last year, and of course, far beyond that, what do you see on the horizon for healing and self-care and mental health? What do you see coming down the pipeline for folks? Caitlin, please start.
I think she session, and like we've said, it's all women of color. And there's a lot of talk about how this is really dangerous. And the thing that I see happening, because I'm watching the trends in Black-owned female businesses, and especially in small businesses, what I see happening is Black women not going back to the workforce the way that it was, not accepting it the way that it was, and creating a new path for all of us. And in which case we will be indebted yet again to the power of Black women in our lives to change everything. And this is, I'm gonna cry. Right. So I know that this is it's a big problem right now, and there's a lot of things happening. But what my hope for this transformation is that all of the people that have been removed from what we've been considering normal for so long, which has been harmful for so long, will no longer be acceptable, because our Black friends are not going to go back to work the same way. Right? They're not going to accept these same things, and it's going to help shift everything for everybody. So I think that we're going to see more inclusive workplaces, better systems for mothers, more support for women, more women in leadership, because the Black women that we're going to need to come back into the workforce are not going to accept it any other way.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? Rosie, please do.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Caitlin. I think too, because of this pandemic and all the mental health issues that have percolated to the top, I'm looking that mental health as a topic will not have such a bad stigma, because everybody in the world now has experienced it in some shape or form. And now I guess I hope that now we'll be able to have a more free dialogue of what this is. And so when someone is saying, my head is like a fog, that it's really something deeper. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Vernette, I saw your hand go up.
Sorry, Caitlin, you got me there. Just a little bit. Felt like you was calling me out there, Caitlin. Okay, I think for me, what I see is I know that obviously the pandemic has not been good at all, but at the same time, I'm also just wondering if it will probably make us more appreciative of the small things, of the little things. For people that have gone through the unfortunate thing of actually losing people that they've known to this thing. I'm kind of hoping that it'll probably help us to be just that much more appreciative and looking at what we do have, particularly for some of us here in the West. As much as obviously we had our problems, there are people that are in the developing countries that still had to deal with and cope and do so with a lot less than what we had. So I know that for me, as much as there was difficulties, I like to say that actually in comparison, what I experienced was inconvenience compared to what other people went through. And I think it's important to be able to have a measuring line, really, compared to what other people have gone through. That, yeah, it's been difficult. Everyone's had different levels of challenge, and that's fine. But moving forward, hopefully, it'll probably make us a bit more patient with ourselves and with people around us as well as part of it, because it's a whole year, like things are not gonna, we're not just gonna flip back, as you said, Caitlin, whether it's the workplace, whether it's the way that we function, we're not gonna just flip back to where we were before. And I think that needs to be reasonable kind of thing, like there are some things that just need to be reasonable to say, do you know what, it's been a year. This is what we've been doing for a year. So equally so, it might take a year or two to maybe get back to certain ways of functioning. And that needs to be all right, if that makes sense.
Yes, all great points. Thank you very much. Who else would like to give some predictions? Nahid, please go ahead.
Thank you, Tanja. I so agree with Caitlin and Vinit that what the changes that we have seen, and if these changes continue, but where I would like to stop is that let's stop with the if. Let's say that these changes will continue, because we are not going to go back, because the time's gone. 2020 is over. Now we are in 2021. And where do we go from here? We can choose. We are not going back. Nothing is going back to normal. This is normal. What's not normal in our life? And it's so good that we are in this place where people have become more appreciative of the small things in life. People have become more appreciative of each other. And there is a different level of understanding that we see in people, which is beyond race, beyond color, beyond religion, beyond country. There's an appreciation which is based on humanity. That has come up. So it's what I see, what I predict, we are going to see more of this emotional care transcending into organizations, getting into the way leadership is. And whether it's a woman leader or a man leader, if they are not following this, they will not be able to sustain it. So yeah, if they don't change, if we still talk about going back to the normal, we are just going to be left out. So it's about going into the future, which is the normal, whatever the future holds, being accepting of that. Whatever changes has happened, let's carry that forward. Let's not go back.
Thank you, Nahid. Sheena, I saw that your hand went up.
Hey, one thing I've noticed is I think, we're going to have more opportunities for women as women, as we see so many things like the first female vice president who's women of color. It's like, I always say a win for one woman is a win for all of us, right? Because she's opening the doors for those leadership roles. Some of the things that we still need to work on is a lot of these industries are still very male dominated, like ballet and makeup. But if we can have one woman just, open that first door for us, so many things is possible. It's already been done in sports, having the first manager, I think, or a head coach, not head coach, but a manager for like a huge baseball team, and even the Golden Globes, the first female director of women of color who was able to win a Golden Globe Award. So all these things, right? Like it just takes one person to create a change for all of us, and learning to celebrate that and just shouting at the top of our lungs to say like finally a woman is making that door for us. And so I think this is I believe the trend is, and hoping it is, because we really need more representation, especially as women. We really need to show others that as women we are capable, and we can create that change, and it can start with us.
Thank you, Sheena. Yes, all wonderful points, great predictions. I think that there's a ton of opportunity for the future to be very bright. But we are at time today. So I want to thank our audience for joining us on this conversation. Don't forget that you can scroll through the chat and grab everyone's links to connect. Panelists, I hope that we're all connecting with each other outside of this. Thank you so much for showing up and playing full out and providing some great insight and tips and predictions for the future for each other, for our audience, and beyond. And I hope to connect with you all again soon. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of the conference, everyone. Bye.